Hey, welcome to today's episode. In this episode, I want to talk a little bit about how to handle if your date is running late. How should you go about it? Well, first of all, there are many reasons why people are late. And it happens to the best of us. It even happens to me. It probably happened to you as well. Sometimes we're just late for a date or for an appointment. So, if your date is running late, what should you do? Well, it depends, of course. There are no specific rules that are set in stone, and you can deviate as much as you want, of course. But there are some guidelines that I would say are very useful, and they will definitely make your dating life easier and less frustrating. So let's dive into it. So you are going on a date, or you are already at the location, you are waiting for your date, and at the time you agreed to meet, she hasn't shown up yet. So as of now, she is late. What should you do? How should you handle it? Like I said, first of all, people run late. It happens. And in the worst case scenario, some people are flaky and don't show up at all. That happens as well. Okay? That is just part of dating. That is the risk we take when we go on a date. If I go on a date, there is always a chance that I'm going to be late or she's going to be late. Or, well, let's say one of us isn't going to show up at all for whatever reason. I'm going to leave the reason in the middle, but it happens. Okay? So that's the risk that we have when we are dating. Now, what I want you to do is, of course, stay calm. Just remember, hey, it's part of dating. It is what it is. She didn't show up or she's late. It is what it is. Go drink a beer. It is what it is. Don't get frustrated. Okay? People are late, so it happens. It's part of life. You can't get frustrated at what is part of life. You know this could happen, so right? So you can calculate for a possibility of somebody not showing up. Don't get frustrated. Also, and this is super important, don't jump to conclusions. Do not jump to any conclusions. Now, why is this? Well, if somebody is running late, right, or even if somebody isn't showing up at all, the first thing that we're thinking is, well, this person is totally shit, right? She didn't show up, or she's running late, she's not respecting my time, etc., etc. And we don't even know what the hell is going on. For all we know, you know, well, we might think, well, she's still at home hanging out with the girlfriends, but maybe something really terrible has happened, right? Maybe she's in an accident. Maybe she's in the hospital and she can't reach you. Maybe she did leave her phone at home and she can't reach you. She can't give you a phone call. You know, it happens. Really, these stupid things, they do happen. Now, if you are going on dates quite often and out of 100 dates, you run into this problem 99% of the time, then maybe you need to figure out a better strategy to select good women to date. But generally speaking, don't jump to conclusions. It happens and we don't know, or you don't know what happened. Okay, so that's definitely important to keep in mind. Okay, so for whatever reason, this person might be running late. Or in the worst case scenario, for whatever reason, she's not showing up at all. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, the next part is important as well. And that is running late is one thing. It happens. You know, you could be late as well for whatever reason. Keep that in mind. So, we do want to handle this with a little bit of grace. We don't want to say, well, she's late, she's 1 minute late, I'm out, bye. That's probably not the best thing to do. You want to handle it with grace. You want to say, well, I hope that if I'm late and potentially can't reach my date, can't call her, can't send her a text message, I hope she waits a little bit for me so I can explain what is going on. And I would say you should do the same. If a person is late, if she's late, you should wait a little bit. Now, how long should you wait? Well, that really depends. Now, you can say, well, no, I'm very strict. We're meeting at 6. If she doesn't show up at 6, I'm out. Well, that's perfectly reasonable. But, you're going to run in a lot of dates where you have to leave because, well, generally speaking, people run late quite frequently. Okay? But you can do that. You can also say, well, no, you know what? I'm just going to wait for at least half an hour or an hour. You can do that. That also is a form of, disrespect towards yourself. If you are going to wait for half an hour or an hour for somebody to show up past the time that you agreed on, I would say you are not doing yourself any favors. You're just wasting your time. Now, I would advise to wait roughly 15 minutes. Right? And this 15 minutes, where does it come from? Well, it comes from from university. We have this thing called the universal or the university 15 minutes, whereas if the teacher or the college professor doesn't show up within 15 minutes after the class starts, students can leave. And I think 15 minutes is perfectly acceptable. If somebody's running late, if you're running late, 15 minutes, most people, if they're running late, they're not going to be late 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes. Usually, if somebody's running late, it's 5, possibly 10 minutes late. Still, too late is too late, but 15 minutes, I would definitely wait 15 minutes. And I hope if I go on a date and I'm late and for whatever reason I can't reach my date, I hope that she's going to wait at least 15 minutes for me as well. Okay. Now, obviously, this really depends on the situation. Now, there are several situations where you can extend, for instance, your waiting time. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, there are a few things, a few sections that we can divide running late in. So the first one is if she lets you know beforehand that she's going to be late, then usually way before you have to leave your home or work or friends to go on the date, right? So let's say she gives you a call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're meeting at 6, and she tells you, look, I'm not going to be able to do 6, something came up, I'm going to be there at 6:30. Now, let's say normally you would have to leave at 5. Now, this time you can leave at 5:30. So you're not really losing any time. The only thing that might happen is that the date, if you're starting the date later, then the date will finish later as well, usually. So you know this beforehand, so you're not wasting any time. So you can say, well, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to meet you at 6:30. Or you're going to say, look, that's going to be too late for me. I don't want to do this date anymore, or I want to reschedule the date. So basically, you haven't wasted any time. Okay? Now, in this case, in this situation, if she calls you at 1 o'clock and she says, look, I can't make 6 o'clock. Okay, perfectly fine. And she tells you, look, I'm going to be there at 6:30. Now, if you decide to go there and at 6 and decide to wait 30 minutes, well, then that's all on you because she told you she was going to run late 30 minutes. Okay, so that's one thing. Did she let you know beforehand? Okay. The other thing is if she doesn't let you know anything. right? If she doesn't let you know anything, well, then you need to accept the fact that you probably have to leave after 15 minutes because you don't know if she's going to show up and if she's going to show up when. Now that leads me to number three, which is if she's running late, but she gives you a time frame. So let's say you are still meeting at 6 and she gives you a call at, let's say, normally speaking, if you're running late, you're going to let the person know a little bit beforehand. So let's say she gives you a call before 6 and she tells you, look, I'm going to be 30 minutes late. Then you can say, look, I'm already on the way to the restaurant or to the coffee shop or whatever. You can right then and there just say, look, that's way too late. I'm turning around, I'm going home. Or you can say, no, I'm going to wait. But at least you know how long you will be waiting. Once again, if she tells you she's going to be later than 15 minutes and you decide to wait, that's on you. Now, we go back to what if she doesn't let you know anything? Now, what should you do? Well, generally speaking, like I said, after 15 minutes, you should just get up and go home. Because, if somebody doesn't let you know anything, that's usually not very good behavior. However, just like I said in the beginning, you don't know what is going on. So you shouldn't jump to conclusions. Now, the problem here is obviously if you are meeting at 6 and you say, well, I'm going to wait 15 minutes, but she hasn't let me know anything, and I'm going to go home, maybe she shows up 20 past 6, right? Then you just missed each other. And maybe the excuse is she did forget her phone, or maybe she did get a flat tire or something like that. Right? Could happen. But usually, even if we don't jump to conclusions, people have their phones with them. And if you're running late, someone will send you a text message or will give you a call. So, generally speaking, if she's running late and she doesn't send you a text message or she doesn't give you a phone call, I would assume she isn't gonna show up. So let's say it's 6 o'clock. Now, you can wait 15 minutes. Now, obviously, if somebody's late 1 or 2 minutes, it happens. Doesn't really matter. You shouldn't be worried too much about that. But let's say you're sitting down at 6 o'clock. It's 5 past 6, 10 past 6, etc., etc. Now, should you do something instead of just waiting 15 minutes and go home? Well, what you can do is just say, okay, I'm going to send her a message. Okay, so it's 5 past 6, and you send her a message like, hey, I'm at the location, I'm at the spot, I'm waiting on you. Where are you? Just really casual, nothing too pushy, nothing too crazy. Just checking in. Just say, look, I'm here, where you're at. Now, if she's on her way, usually if somebody's like 5 minutes late, probably something like parking the car or walking from the bus stop, something silly like that. So usually you'll get a fast response like, yeah, I just parked. I'm gonna be there within 2 minutes, something along those lines. If you don't get a response, you go home after 15 minutes. You don't need to send any following up texts. You just send her one text message. You ask her, look, I'm here, where you're at. You get a response. You wait for her. You don't get a response. After 15 minutes, you get up and go home. Now, why is this important? Well, first of all, it shows that you are someone who is considerate and you are someone who is not assuming the worst, right? You also open up a line of communication, to her and to give her the opportunity to let her know that she's going to be late. Now, that is something that you should do. And that is important. If you leave after 15 minutes, right, and you have done your job, you were there, you send a follow-up text like, hey, I'm here, where you're at, and you don't send any following up texts, you just go home. Why is this important that you leave? Well, it is important to yourself, but also to the other person, that if this person is showing up, let's say 20 minutes, 25 minutes after the agreed upon time, it basically sets a boundary where you're saying, look, I value my time. I'm a considerate person. I give you some grace period. I give you like 15 minutes where you can be late. I even send a text message to check on you where you're at. But I do have a limit, I do have a boundary, and you are overstepping the boundary, so I'm gonna go home. I respect my time too much to wait more than 15 minutes. Now, I do know people who say, look, I wait 5 minutes. If she doesn't show up 5 minutes past, I'm out. Perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. Because I value my time way too much to be even waiting 15 minutes. That's up to you. Okay? So, also, what I think is important here is what sometimes happens is when you go on a date and, for instance, the person doesn't show up, because it happens. Let's be reasonable. Let's say you wait 15 minutes and you haven't received a text message and whatnot, and you decide to go home. You usually feel, well, not the best. You probably feel a little bit shitty, right? Because everything goes to your mind like, why didn't she send a text message? Why didn't she call? Why didn't she pick up? Why didn't she reply? It must be me, etc., etc. So on the drive home, you feel usually a little bit awkward, a little bit awful, right? You don't feel the best person, and that's perfectly normal. But can you imagine how you feel if you go home after you've waited for 45 minutes and she didn't show up? Not only did you not respect your time, you're also going to feel really bad about yourself. Because what you're going to say is, well, I should have left after 5 minutes. I should have left after 10, after 15 minutes. I should not have waited 45 minutes. And you're right, you shouldn't have. So setting a boundary on 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, if the person doesn't show up and you go home, you feel a little bit less silly than if you were to wait a very long time. So that's something that you should do. Now, what can you do if she tells you, look, I'm going to be late? Well, it depends. Like I usually say, look, I wait 15 minutes. If you don't show up after 15 minutes, I go home. I definitely do send a text message like, I'm here. Where are you? Are you gonna show up? What is going on? If I don't get a reply after 15 minutes, I go home. I get up and I leave. Now, let's say I'm there at 6. It's 5 past 6. I send a text message. Where are you? And she sends me a message like, look, I'm in a traffic jam. My phone is acting weird, whatever, whatever. And she tells me, look, I'm not going to be there at 6. I'm not going to be there at 10 past 6. I'm going to be there at 6:30, possibly. Now, this puts me in a spot where I have to say, okay, do I extend my grace period, my waiting time, my waiting limit, or do I tell this woman, no, I'm going to go home. This is unacceptable. That really depends on the situation. Now, I'm going to be honest here. There have been situations where where I said, look, that's unacceptable. I'm going to go home. And there were times where that has happened where I said, look, it's not cool, but I'll wait. Now, that has to do with the previous interaction that you've had with this woman. For instance, on a dating app or perhaps at work or whatever. Maybe you've known her a little bit. It depends really on the situation. Like, do you really like her? Is she really into you? How is the vibe, etc., etc. And then you have to basically check for yourself, like, okay, this is probably going to be worth waiting a little bit longer. Or you can say, well, I wasn't really that much into her, so I'm not going to wait that long. I'm willing to wait 15 minutes, but I'm going to go home now. So that's up to you. If you do, well, in the meantime, just drink a beer, read some emails, listen to a podcast, whatever it is that you want to do. Just keep yourself busy, keep yourself occupied for a little bit. Now, um, what I often do when I go on a date is I schedule 2 dates back to back. So I have one date from 6 to 7 and one date from, let's say, 7 to 8. Now, this is not necessarily because the first dates always bail on me. No, not really. But it's more convenient and efficient. And if my first date isn't going to show up, then I haven't driven to the city or to the location for nothing. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. Just schedule dates back to back. Okay, so there is still a way that your evening is going to be successful, and that you didn't dress up for nothing. What you can also do is on such a day that you are going on a date is ask a friend if they are home. That if the date doesn't go well, or if she doesn't show up, that you can go to a friend's house, watch a movie, grab dinner, or something like that. Okay, and if you're up for it, what you can do is just treat yourself. If you are going to a restaurant and she isn't showing up, well, just eat dinner by yourself. Enjoy yourself a little bit. You can do that as well. Okay, so what's next? Well, let's say she she's late. You decided to leave, but once you've left, you get a call or you get a message that she has arrived. Uh-oh, what are you going to do now? Now, this is a little bit tricky because it really depends, once again, on the situation. Now, let's say you are already in the car on your way home, then I would say something along the lines of, yeah, I've waited for you for 15 minutes. I'm already in my car. I'm already driving home. I'm sorry. Now, let's say you are walking to your car. So potentially you could just say, yeah, I'll turn around and I'll go back. Now, you can do that. Now, what I really like to do in these cases or in these situations, and it does happen from time to time, is you don't go back. Let's say you are meeting at a restaurant and she tells you, I arrived and you already left. Well, you shouldn't go back because that date, that spot was reserved for 6 o'clock, and potentially 15 minutes later, but that date is out the window now. So basically, we're going to set up a new date right on the spot if you want. So what you need to do is decide, do you still want to meet up with this woman who didn't let you know anything, etc., etc. Now, if you do, you tell her, sure, that's great that you have arrived, but I already left. Now, if you still want to see me, if you still want to meet me, I'm at XYZ. If you want, you can meet me over here. Possibly there's a coffee shop nearby, or you just tell her, well, I'm walking to my car. If you want, we can meet and we can just do a walking date, whatever. Right? So that's basically what you should do. Now, this is basically for you to not waste your time and for her to put in some extra work. She's already late. Now she has to do something extra. That's something important. Now you don't need to make this. You don't need to make her crawl on the ground. You don't need to do anything crazy like that. But you just have to say, look, I've been waiting there for 15 minutes. You've wasted 15 of my minutes. And now I'm already walking away. If you still want to meet, now you have to do something for me. Show me that you still really want to meet me. Usually, she will meet you at the spot where you are at that moment. And from there on, you just pick up the date as you normally would, right? Now, what I also think is super important that, let's say if she is late and you are still at the location, you should address the fact that she is late. You should address it, definitely. But you shouldn't do it in a nagging, very negative way. You should address it, but you should, like, you mean it, you should mean it, but you should be positive about it, right? So let's say she's late and you're still there. Then you can say something along the lines of, look, you're late, so you're going to have to make it up to me. First round is on you. Something like that, right? That basically lets her know, look, he doesn't take shit. I was late and I have to do something extra. I shouldn't be late next time, right? And that basically tells her, look, you don't appreciate that she's late. She has to make it up, but also you're not a dick about it, right? Just say it and move on. Don't complain about it. Okay, so let's go back to the fact that you just left and she lets you know, look, I arrived, now what? You have to decide, do you want to meet her? Do you not want to meet her? If you do, then you can tell her to come to the place where you are at the moment. Or if you don't, you just tell her, look, I've waited for you for a reasonable amount of time. I've waited 15 minutes for you. You didn't let me know anything. I didn't get a reply, didn't get a reaction. So I decided to leave. And I have no further interest in dating you. And I wish you the best. That's all you should say. Just be polite. Don't be a dick. Don't be, don't be complaining. Just keep it light, keep it simple. Just tell her, look, I already left. I waited for you. You didn't send a reply. So I left. I have no further interest in dating you. And I wish you the best. And then, super important, you block and delete. Because what might happen is she'll send you a message that you have to reply to. She'll send you a message, you reply to it. And before you know it, you get into a full heated discussion, arguments, and whatnot. You don't want to do that. You just tell her, look, I'm out, peace. Block, delete, and you're out. Okay? Now, if we go back to the fact that you are still waiting in, let's say, the restaurant, and she arrives late, you do tell her, look, you're late, so you're gonna have to order the first round. You're gonna have to pay for the first round, or you're gonna have to make it up to me in some other way, right? So you address it, but you're being lighthearted about it. Also, super important, when she's late, you should take note of how they explain the fact that they are late. Does she apologize? Does she have a valid reason? Because these are good indicators of her character, her reliability, right? So if she's late and she sincerely apologizes and perhaps she says, look, I'm late, I'm super sorry, I will order the first round. Look, now that's a good apology. She knows she's late and she's making it up on the spot. That's great. If she doesn't say anything about her being late, she doesn't apologize, she doesn't explain it, she doesn't really have a good reason. Basically, she just brushes it off, like she doesn't acknowledge it. This might be a red flag. I don't really use the term red flags, but it might be a red flag. So basically, what she's telling you there is she doesn't care if she's late. She doesn't care if you're waiting or not. So that is super important. How do they handle, or how does she handle being late? Now, what you shouldn't do, I have three things that you definitely shouldn't do. One, do not complain. Do not hold a grudge. Okay? Because this just sets a negative tone for the rest of the date. Acknowledge that she's late. Move on. Okay? If you're really pissed about her being late, you leave. You shouldn't be there. Okay? The second one is you shouldn't leave without checking in. Like I said, if you are waiting 15 minutes and you just get up and leave, yes, she's late, but you're also being a little bit of a dick. You should not leave without checking in. So you should send her a message. Look, I'm waiting. Where are you? If she doesn't reply, you leave after 15 minutes. Okay? Now, I just said, well, you shouldn't send any more following up texts, but you could, if you want, because you already told her that you are at the location and you're waiting on her. So normal people will assume that someone isn't going to wait forever. And if I'm going to be late and I'm meeting a woman at 6 and I'm running late and it's already 15 past 6, I can reasonably think or assume that she might have left because I didn't let her know anything. So you send her a text message like, look, I'm waiting on you. Where are you? And then you leave. But you can send a second message where you tell her, look, it's 15 past 6. I've already sent you a message. You don't reply. I'm not going to wait any longer. So I'm going to go home. Have a good evening. And you leave it at that. Now, the third thing that is important is, just like the first part, don't complain about it. Don't hold a grudge. It sets a negative tone for the rest of the date. And you shouldn't let her being late ruin the mood. Okay? Yes, it's shitty. Yes, it sucks. Yes, all of that. You're right. But you should be cool. You should be calm. Maintain composure and just enjoy your evening. Okay? That's why you have to address it. Once you've addressed it, you can say what you want to say. You've addressed it. Now you can relax and you can move on. She knows, you know. Now you can enjoy the evening. Okay? So these are some tips, some strategies that you can apply to your dating life. And they definitely work and they definitely make your life easier when it comes to dating. So I hope these tips are useful and that you can implement them. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.